Hi, my name is Jesse Hope. I'm the founder and curator of Old Quindaro Museum, and I'm here to give you a personal tour of the Museum of Old Quindaro. I want you to listen to what we have to say, understand what we're trying to provide, and enjoy our tour for this present circumstance. Right now we're standing in front of the museum, which is formerly the residence of the John Allen Walker home. Mr. Walker was a caretaker for the West University for more than over 50 years. The story of him is phenomenal when you think in terms of how he came from such deprivation and was able to develop a home for his family and a legacy such as he did. If you follow me, we're going to go into the museum and start with our tour. Mr. Walker moved here with his dad and his cousin in 1873. His dad had been a farmer slave in some part of Mississippi, and unfortunately, in trying to do the bidding of his master, he was asked to do a chore that was to be asked to run ahead of the dogs to see how soon he would be retrieved. Unfortunately, his dad was instructed that if the dogs got in too close a pursuit, he was to get into a tree, and that he would be the master would come after him and get him back on horseback and take him back to the slave quarters. However, when the dogs did pursue him as close as they did, and Mr. Walker climbed up into the tree, he was unable to get one of his feet up in the tree with himself, and his foot was terribly mauled. And after a day and a night or better, gangrene set up and the foot had to be amputated. Unfortunately, this meant that Mr. Walker would have to spend the rest of his days with half of the circumstance. What we finally decided now is that Mr. Walker's dad, who had obviously unbearable tenacity, after slavery was abolished, was able to get endorsements from different individuals in the county that he lived, because he had been given the chore on the plantation to make shoes for the other slaves. We always kind of say that that was kind of an oxymoron. You lose your foot and then you make shoes for everybody else. But he got very proficient at that gift, and through that he was able to write to the citizens in the white community of Quindaro and ask for them to pay for his passage to the town of Quindaro and help set him up in business so that he could have a new life in this free state of Kansas. They did do as he asked, and they sent for him, and in the year of 1873 they landed at the Quindaro Flat. They were set up in business near 27th and Brown Avenue, sent the two boys to the white Quindaro School, which was something unheard of at that time. They both graduated to the 8th grade level. Mr. Walker, that we know, became a postal worker in the early 1900s, built this home, and was able to work in that capacity until he asked the president of the college if he would be able to do lawn care service with the department. And they told him, well, you make too much money at the post office. We couldn't afford to pay you. And at that point he asked his wife about a career change, and he was able to come and work for West University and served with them for well over 60 years. That gives you a little rundown about the house. We had the fortune of trying to do an exhibit about Quindaro, and the house became available for sale. We struck an agreement with the ancestor of Mr. Walker and the unified government, and our commissioner, Mr. Nathan Barnes, was very instrumental in helping us procure this property, and that's why we are here as we are today. My first example or display that I will talk with you about, once you get into our living room area, is the founding of the Quindaro Wyandotte Nation and the abolitionists, 1844 to 1866. This is all of the people of the Quindaro community at that time, the founding families and people. And you will see that there is Nancy Quindaro Brown, who was the daughter of Adam Brown, chief of the Wyandotte Nation, that came here between the 1840s and 50s, settled in this community, was pursued in marriage by the gentleman below her, Abelard Guthrie, and who her father was not in favor of her marrying, but she did anyway. And unfortunately, the marriage called for her to have a diary, and that was what she was given to Mr. Guthrie, and that was what he used to start the town of Quindaro. After that, we had Chief John Gray Eyes,
Point it out.
that we have here to your left of Nancy Brown Guthrie. Chief Gray Eyes was Wyandotte chief after her father, Adam Brown, was removed or passed on probably. And he was the one who was instrumental in helping the African American community of Quindaro to secure their properties. And all this was done prior to the Civil War. We have his wife, Katie Gray Eyes, who we don't know a lot about other than the fact that she was his wife. And then we have Hannah Zane, who was the wife of the Zane gentleman that owned the Quindaro Hotel in what at that time the Quindaro town now would be the ruins. Chief Torrey never made it to this area. He was in Ohio, and that's where they came from, was Sandusky, Ohio. He was a great leader in their nation, and just as African American history and American history, most of it is done through the telling and the storytelling, which we find to be quite accurate many, many times. Sundom Wah was not only a chief, but he was a Methodist minister. Legend says that he was tragically killed, he and his daughter, for what reason we don't know, or for why we have no idea. But I believe that also occurred in the Ohios. Then we have Isaac Brown and his wife. Isaac Brown was the brother to Nancy Brown. And it was because of him we have the street here in Kansas City, Kansas, known as Brown Avenue. It was named after him. We also have the house here. It was built in the early 1850s. And this was the house that Nancy Brown, Quindaro Brown Guthrie, and her husband Abelard lived in. It's also the house that the well-renowned Bishop W.T. Vernon lived in for a long period of time. And Reverend Evan Blashley, who was the one that benefited the property to the African American community for the benefit of the freedom of school that they started. Then we have down here the abolitionist family of the Saulers. They were a big family that was known to be very helpful, even to my family in particular. I might mention that my family, I'm fourth generation. There are now more than 8 or 9 generations in my family, but I do have recall and record of mostly of that, and I will go into that at another time. We also have over here in our display of slavery in America from 1619, to 1865. We have some information for most of you all that are not aware of the fact that some of the slavery that was brought upon America was through some of the mistakes that some of our masters made. A lot of it had to do with having relationships with the slaves and ending up selling a lot of the children. That's what happened. You see, there's very many of these flyers that say that they're mulattoes that they're selling. That's what they were called in those days. We also have one here that tells you about a raffle. We have an auction here. This one tells you plenty to eat and drink. The scare that was going on in America in the 1850s was that they were going to go west with slavery, and that was why we got to be known as Bleeding Kansas. This knife here is the knife that my great-great-grandfather, Robert Monroe, brought with him from Clay County, Missouri, when his daughter was sold into slavery, and he had been sold twice, and could not trust the fact that he would be sold again. So we found this knife many years ago in 1973, 72 actually, in my great-uncle Frank's house, who was the one that told us accurately about our family and our legacy and our history. These are my ancestors on my maternal side, my great-grandparents, Walter and Queen Victoria Monroe. Here is a more larger group of the family in their early days. And then we have Uncle Frank and his family in the house here that they lived in on the place that was bought, giving us the benefit from the Wyandotte Nation. Had there been a chance that they could have done this with a zoom lens or a broad screen, you would have seen teepees around these houses. This is my great-grandfather's house, and my grandfather and his wife, my grandfather's sister, his brothers, and cousins, and different ones that we have. We also have the Banks family. And that family that I mentioned of mine was the Monroes. We have the Banks family, which go back to the pre-slavery years, or pre-Civil War years, and the Griggs family, and the Graves family. And we also have the Marshalls and the Saunders and Turners. And a lot of these families are completely out of, or extinct, or down to just a very few still living. Some don't even know that they are, or have a legacy as old as what we have. We've had our house furnished in this capacity for the benefit of giving, like back in our times when older people lived in the way they did and would tell us their legacy and their heritage, and we would have all kinds of questions for them. And this was better than TV in those times.